Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to break down one of the most important and honestly, most devastating chapters in Indian history, the economic policies of the British in India. How did the British systematically drain India's wealth, destroy our industries and leave a legacy that still shapes our economy? Let's jump in and uncover the real story behind those numbers. Foundation of British economic policy. Let's start with the basics. The British economic policy in India was built on mercantilism. What does that mean? It means the British wanted to make India a colony, a place that would supply cheap raw materials like cotton and indigo to Britain, the mother country. In return, India was forced to import finished British products at high prices. So, gold, silver, and wealth flowed out of India and finished goods flowed in. This wasn't just trade, it was a system of one-sided free trade. All the benefits went to Britain, while India's economy was systematically drained. The impact on Indian industry. Now, let's talk about the Indian handloom sector. This was one of the world's oldest and most advanced textile industries. But with the arrival of cheap, imported British machine goods, the handloom sector was destroyed. Rural economies collapsed. Unemployment soared, and artisans were forced to leave their crafts and turn to agriculture. This process is called ruralization, as cities declined. More and more people put pressure on the land. Karl Marx famously said, "India became from mother of cotton and exporter of finished goods to importer of goods, exporter of raw materials." The British even called for regulations in Indian factories, leading to the Indian Factory Act of 1881. But this wasn't out of concern for workers. It was because they feared Indian textile industries were becoming competitive rivals. The result? Deindustrialisation. India was forced into a classic colonial pattern. One-way free trade, tariff policies favouring Britain, and a shift from being a producer of finished goods to a supplier of raw materials. Railways and commercial revolution. Now, let's talk about the railways, often called the gift of the British to India. But was it really a gift? The British introduced the Capitalists' Guarantee Scheme. Private British corporations raised money at a 5% return, while the British interest rate was just 3%. Who paid the difference? Indian taxpayers. So, in reality, India subsidized British industry. The railways had an inverted tariff structure. Goods traveling longer distances got discounts, which helped exports but hurt local markets. Profits were privatized, but losses were socialized. Paid by Indians. And here's the kicker. The development of the railways was not coordinated with India's industrial needs. Instead of sparking an industrial revolution, it enabled a commercial revolution, making it easier for foreign goods to outsell Indian products. Railways bypassed the hinterlands, focused on ports and led to poor grain distribution, especially during famines. Industrialization. Let's talk about industrialization. The Charter Act of 1813 allowed one-way free trade for British citizens. But industrial growth in India was slow, painful, and regionally concentrated, mainly in cities like Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras. There was no development of capital goods industries, and all machinery had to be imported. The focus was on consumer goods, not on building a strong industrial base. Who benefited? British capitalists. Their wealth and influence grew, leading to policies that favored them even more. Technical education was ignored, stifling the growth of Indian entrepreneurs and skilled labor. Agriculture, land revenue, and peasantry. Now, let's look at land revenue and agriculture. The British made ownership of land legally enforceable, with a formal judiciary. That this came with high, inflexible taxes. Farmers were forced to shift from food grains to cash crops like cotton and indigo, reducing food grain cultivation and increasing food insecurity. New systems like the Tincathia and Niche systems were introduced. Commercialization favored traders. Farmers had to sell produce at cheap prices immediately after harvest, leaving no reserves for bad years. There was no investment in agriculture, leading to the collapse of traditional agrarian life. Land was commodified for exports. reduced to a tool for colonial revenue extraction and revenue systems. Let's break down the main land revenue systems. Permanent settlement reduced cultivators to tenants without rights. Merchant zamindars and absentee landlords emerged. With a chain of intermediaries, all costs borne by cultivators. Mahalwari system meant revenue was settled at the village level, but farmers faced a triple whammy: taxes from the British, zamindars and moneylenders. No surplus for farmers and productivity gains were minimal. Riotwary system let peasants keep cultivator rights, but high taxes meant non-payment led to displacement. All this led to impoverishment of the peasantry, debt, and a rise in peasant revolts. Famines and governance failures. The Bengal famine of 1770 exposed the cruelty of British policy. As millions starved, the East India Company exported rice and collected high revenues. The government relied on free market mechanisms, refused to regulate food prices, and let traditional support systems decline. Railways shipped food out, not in. Later famines saw minimal relief. Even as the British spent lavishly on ceremonies like the Delhi Durbar. During World War II, food was diverted for war and grain transfers from Bengal were banned. The colonial state prioritized revenue extraction and administrative control, not human welfare. Urbanization, handicrafts and ruralization. Cities like Surat and Calcutta became trade hubs. But Indian handicrafts couldn't compete with cheap British imports. Artisans abandoned their crafts and moved to agriculture, leading to ruralization and more pressure on land. The inverted tariff structure decayed rural artisan industry. With cotton weaving and spinning worst hit, expenditure and social impact. British priorities were clear: revenue extraction and imperial control over Indian welfare. Social spending on health, education, and welfare was minimal. Life expectancy was just 22 years in 1911. Indian money funded British soldiers and officials, draining the economy further. Political control over India was often collateral for British loans, and expansion beyond Indian borders was funded from Indian resources. The economic drain and nationalist response. Nationalists like Dadabhai Naoroji revealed the scale of the economic drain. More money left India than all the land revenue combined. This became a rallying point for the freedom movement, exposing the true nature of British rule through books like Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. The lasting legacy of British economic policies led to deindustrialisation, ruralisation, famines, and mass poverty, but they also united Indians in the fight for freedom. Understanding these policies helps us see how history shapes our present and why economic justice still matters today. If you found this video insightful, like, share and subscribe for more.